Hello and welcome to the Department of Energy's SBIR STTR Notice of Funding Opportunities webinar. My name is Zina Al-Yusuf. I am with the DOE SBIR Programs Office. Today's presenter is SBIR STTR Outreach Manager Eileen Chant, and also currently serving as Acting Director of SBIR STTR Programs Office. Eileen will provide you with an overview of the federal SBIR STTR programs, DOE SBIR STTR technology areas, DOE application and award process as it relates to the FY25 Phase 1 Release 2 Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO as we refer to it. New for FY25, we are holding 2 webinars for the Notice of Funding Opportunity. The first one is today's webinar, which is dedicated to the overview of the DOE SBIR STTR application and award process as it relates to Phase 1 Release 2. And tomorrow, Friday, January 3rd at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, we are hosting a question and answer session. We are doing this as we realize that a lot of the questions are answered through the presentation, and we want to make sure that we are getting your unique questions. The recording of both webinars, along with the presentations, will be posted on our website under Funding Opportunities webpage. Again, welcome, and now let's start. Eileen.
Thank you, Zina, and hello, everybody. Again, I'm Eileen Chant, and I'm here to talk about our fiscal year 2025 Phase 1 Release 2 funding opportunity. So for those who are new and just learning about the SBIR STTR Programs Office, it is overall in excess of $4 billion per year in early stage non-dilutive research and funding. It is a set aside of roughly 3.5% of all the federal government's extramural R&D, and it is a set aside for small businesses to fund the best early stage ideas that businesses have to take research and development and develop it into technology which can be commercialized. The Phase 1 award is for an early stage idea, and we operate in the space of, in that space because those early stage ideas, whether it's you're working on a technology that's already developed and you're doing something new with it, or is an idea in your head, it's too high risk for the private sector to invest. And that's where the federal government plays a part in funding and stimulating technological innovation. The SBIR program's been around for over 40 years. Here are the goals of the program. Some of them I sort of touched on the previous slide. But included in that is that we are directed to foster and encourage participation in the program by women and or socially or economically disadvantaged persons. And additionally, Congress wants to see the R&D money that is spent by the government and turned into useful products that can be, turned into a commercial product or benefit society in some way. So it is seen as a way to take technology in the universities and the national labs and spin them out into the private sector. STTR is a little over than 30 years old, and it is a little bit different than SBIR. It does require a research institution participation, and it was designed to sort of really accelerate the technology transfer out of national labs and out of universities. But it doesn't require that the technology reside with the research institution. It can be just that the small businesses require the university's participation in order to or the national lab's participation in order to develop the technology. But it is designed to be a cooperative project between a small business and a research institution. Just so that everybody knows, there are 11 agencies that have SBIR programs. The top 6 also have STTR programs. Those are the 6 on the top row are also the 6 largest programs. There's a lot of overlap in what the agencies fund. You really should go to sbir.gov and check out all of the agencies and what they fund. You can do a technology keyword search and see what else there is out there for you. The U.S. Department of Agriculture is interested in decarbonization of the agricultural sector, so they're interested in new energy technologies. NSF will fund anything. They don't have topics, but they are very interested in, they're interested in really early stage companies. So you might want to check in to see if you're a fit with NSF as well. There's overlap between the programs, but the programs are different. Each one has its own application process. Some of the agencies offer grants, some of them offer contracts. It's important to know the difference. If you are working with a contracting agency, it's probably that your program manager is probably going to be very involved in the technology development, the milestones, and you may be delivering your technology to that agency, whether it's the Department of Defense or the Department of Homeland Security at the end of the day. DOE is a granting agency, which also means that DOE is not going to be your customer at the end of the day. We're funding technologies that advance our mission, but there are very few instances of of the Department of Energy purchasing the developed technology. Just a slide on the Department of Energy's threefold mission. There is U.S. leadership in energy technology, which people are generally aware of. But our goals and mission also include development of basic energy and energy sciences, understanding materials, understanding how energy behaves, how nuclear particles behave, how particle physics behave, and more. And the third goal is that DOE is tasked with nuclear security, which includes nuclear non-proliferation and ensuring, cleanup of the nation's nuclear weapons waste sites as well. So our program is about $300 million a year. We issue very focused topics that are aligned with our threefold mission, and you do have to be a good fit with a topic in order to be able to put together a competitive application. But the good news is that our topics are more wide-ranging than most expect. We have hundreds of topics a year. You definitely want to kind of take a deep dive into our topics document and see what there is for you. If you're developing artificial intelligence, that's kind of throughout our topics, because artificial intelligence can be used for pretty much everything. So you might want to look through the whole topics document and see if there's a problem that needs solving and that your artificial intelligence technology can solve. We have 2 phase 1 solicitations per year. That's the entry point into our program. And if you are going to prepare and submit a phase 1 application, make sure that you know that a letter of intent is required about 6 weeks before the application. In this case, January 14th. And very importantly, we offer an application assistance program for first-timers. You have to be a first-timer submitting to our program, but you will receive a coach that will help you through the application process. Okay, a little bit about the differences between SBIR and STTR. As I mentioned, STTR requires you to be working with a nonprofit research institution. They must do a minimum of 30% of the R&D for the STTR application, whereas the small business must do a minimum of 40% of the R&D. With SBIR, you can have a research institution partner, but it's not required. The small business must do a minimum of 67% of the R&D. Another important difference is that there are different principal investigator requirements between the two programs. The PI must be an employee of the small business for the SBIR STTR program. And in the case of the STTR program, the PI can be an employee of either the small business or the research institution. So therefore, like a postdoc at a university could be a PI of an STTR award, or a professor, that type of thing. And you just, it's part of our application requirements to go ahead after you do your budgeting and everything like that, you plug in these numbers in our level of effort workbook to make sure you're compliant with the program that you're applying to. And you can, there's a sweet spot where you fulfill the requirements of both SBIR and STTR, and you can submit the same application to both programs. But you really want to design your program to whatever makes sense. What are your research requirements, and do you really need a research institution to conduct your research? Make sure you understand the eligibility requirements to apply. The applicant is a business. It's not an individual. It's not a university. It's a for-profit US-based business. Small business is liberally defined as 500 employees or fewer. And then there are some ownership and control requirements. So you might want to take a look closely at that information in the Notice of Funding Opportunity announcement. And it's, basically the majority of your firm must be owned and controlled by citizens or permanent residents of the United States. And it can be owned by other businesses, but that ownership criteria is going to be the same. All R&D must be performed in the United States. And then there's also requirements about the legal form of your business, and there are some venture capital rules as well. So take a close look at those if you are venture capital owned. You may or may not be eligible for SBIR. Okay, so sort of just some high-level information about the program, the award. It is a competitive award process. About 18% of phase 1 applications receive an award. The applications are ranked after they undergo the review process. They are ranked. They are sort of like ordered from the most highly regarded applications to the more least meritorious applications. And we more or less take the cream of the applications, and those are the ones that are selected for funding. We do receive more meritorious applications than we have funds for. Typically, about 40% of our applications are meritorious and 18% are funded. Award grants are a really good deal for small businesses. You do not have to repay it even if your R&D fails. It is non-dilutive funding. We do not take a piece of the company. You retain rights to your intellectual property, and there is no cost sharing required as well. As I mentioned, small businesses retain the patent rights to any invention developed with government support under the SBIR program. And the government will not release any of your technical reports for a period of 20 years as a measure of protecting the information, the IP you developed during your award process. The federal government, you should know, reserves the right for a royalty-free license for federal government use. And that would be in the case of some type of national emergency, but be aware that this particular license has never been executed. There have been times where the government considered it, but it has never actually been activated. So it's not really anything that you, as an awardee, should be significantly concerned about. All right, I talked about the 20-year data protection period. Okay, so we have 2 releases a year. This is the one we're talking about now here on the right, release 2. These are the 7 offices that have topics out as part of this release. And we'll talk a little bit more about those offices. These are our applied offices. They are generally interested in technologies that are, have more sort of obvious commercial applications, I would say. Release 1 comes out in July. These are the 6 offices that release topics at release 1. So put, July 7th on your calendar. You do want to open the topics document on that day and see if there's something in there for you. These are our sciencey offices. I call them the deep science offices. And they're looking for a lot of components, things that are needed to advance the understanding of energy science, to understand the atmosphere, plant biology, what kind of contribution small businesses can make to the fusion energy supply chain, and the study of high energy physics, nuclear physics, and of course, advanced computing. So there's a lot of instrumentation, new materials, plasma, spectrometers, lasers in release 1, and release 2, again, are looking for more applied technologies. You do have to enter our program through a phase 1 application and award. Phase 1 study is a proof of feasibility. It's for an idea that you have, whether it's a very early stage idea and your technology it is mostly in your head or on paper right now, that's fine. You may have advanced technology, you might be doing something new with it or using it to solve a new problem. That's perfectly acceptable as well for a phase 1 application. If you receive a phase 1 award, you get 200 or 250 topic dependent to conduct your study over 6 to 12 months. 9.5 months into your phase 1 award, you're going to want to prepare and submit your phase 2 application, which is for a larger amount of money, 1.1 or 1.6 million. And you are more focused on moving it along the readiness level and developing your prototype, demonstrating your technology, and really working on your commercialization activities. For projects that can be shown to be promising but need more R&D in order to transition to commercialization, we do have a second phase 2 award and a third phase 2 award. The third phase 2 award does require matching. It's the only one of the grants on this screen that require matching. Sooner or later, you do have to wean yourself off of SBIR dollars, and phase 3 that's shown here, the green arrow, is about transitioning outside of the SBIR program. You might receive more money from the federal government to conduct your R&D. You might receive money from investors. You might get purchased by a larger company, or you might have customers. So phase 3 refers to any non-SBIR STTR funding. Okay, the office of, I'm just going to go through the 7 offices that have issued topics. The Office of Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response. They have 1 topic and 2 subtopics out. Right now, they are interested in cybersecurity, energy security, and emergency response. And this is, of course, specific to our nation's energy infrastructure. So it might be about power plants or the electric grid, distribution substations, etc. I have the website here. It's important to go to the website of the program office that you're applying to and just, check out what they're doing, what are their priorities, what other funding opportunities they have. So I have included the links on these pages. The Office of Defense Nuclear Nonproliferation has, looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 topics with a number of subtopics. They are interested in technologies that can prevent nuclear proliferation. It may be detection of nuclear detonations. It might be detection of movement of nuclear materials, and other types of technologies that can help sense and mitigate defense proliferation. The Office of Electricity is, their mission includes modernization of our energy infrastructure and energy grid, and they have 2 topics out that are shown here on advanced grid technology and voltage source converters. The Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. This is a big office. They give about 40% of we have 13 offices that publish topics. They give out about 40% of our awards. They have a number of sub-technology offices that are listed here. And these are the kinds of technologies that people associate with the Department of Energy: solar, wind, hydrogen, fuel cell, vehicle technology, and more. There's a lot of topics there. There's a lot there. Take a look at those topics. And you never know where a topic might be a good fit for what you're doing, because you may find a problem that you can solve with your technology that you had never thought of before in our topics document. We have our Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management. Their topics are very focused on carbon capture, conversion, and sequestration, and carbon dioxide removal. The Office of Nuclear Energy issues lots of topics in the areas of components, materials, artificial intelligence, digital twins, and more. They have 35 subtopics, including an other technology topic, which means if you have something that could be beneficial to the nuclear energy industry and it's not listed in that list of 35 topics, you could apply to the other subtopic. They have topics on nuclear waste technology and nuclear energy cross-cutting capabilities. So anyway, like I said, you should go to the fundings, you should go to the mission and the program office website and get to understand, maybe they've had some reports out recently that you should read, what type of conferences are going on, and there's contact information on these pages as well. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the fun part, the application process, because it is a fairly lengthy process. There are a fair number of requirements in preparing your phase 1 application, including, especially if it is your first time. It does reportedly take first timers in excess of 100 hours to prepare their first phase 1 application. Our funding opportunities page shows the schedule, the kind of the timeline of the phase 1 release 2 is shown here on this page. If you haven't gone back and listened to your topic, these are the technical topic managers talking about what they're looking for. You should go back. You can fast forward. I mean, if you're applying to topic 9, you can just fast forward to that. And for example, in this webinar recording, but make sure you listen to that little snippet of the topic webinar where they're talking about your topic. Don't forget your letter of intent. It is due January 14th. You will not be eligible for submitting a phase 1 application if you don't submit your LOI by January 14th. Applications are due on February 26th prior to midnight on grants.gov. Note that the letters of intent are submitted in a different system, PAMS, the Office of Science PAMS system. And it is expected that you will receive notification on May 27th of our intent to award or not award your application. Grant start date is on July 8th, approximately. Once you become an awardee, there are a bunch of awardee programs that kick in that are very beneficial. We have an awardee webinar. It talks about how to execute your grant, like the financial aspect of it, reporting requirements. We have a principal investigator meeting. We have a phase shift program, which you may apply for, and more. I mentioned our application assistance program. We call it Phase 0. If you are a first timer submitting an application to our program, you are eligible. You do have to go to the apply portal, enter in a little bit of information. It's not a lot. You have to include your resume, and you have to be able to include a few sentences about what you're going to propose, and you have to select your topic and subtopic pair. And they will review to make sure that you're being relatively responsive to the topic, that your idea is novel, and that you do have the background that is required to conduct the R&D. But the requirements to get in are basically that into the Phase 0 program, and there is ample space available at this moment. For the program, you will get a coach, someone who you can spend lots of time on the phone and Teams meeting with, and you'll be receiving review services. They do not write the content for you, but they will review your letter of intent. They will review your project narrative. They will conduct a little bit of market research for you so you understand the size of the market that you are trying to enter. And they help you with the systems registration. They help you with your financial forms. And then there are some optional services as well. So I highly recommend this program for anyone who's a first timer and would like a coach to help you put all the pieces together. Just a little bit about our programs. It's a sort of complex system. We're down here at the bottom. We are the administrative office. We developed the we're calling them NOFOs now. They used to be FOAs. They are now NOFOs. We do assist you all with your applications. We do the review of the applications. And we're just sort of administrating the process. The program offices up here on the left are the ones that develop the topics. There's 13 of them, remember. They identify reviewers, and then the reviewers provide the program offices with feedback on the quality of the applications, and the program offices are the ones who ultimately select the awardees and provide oversight on the projects. That's can be, there can be very little oversight in a project, or there could be more. It really depends on the program manager. And then we have the Chicago office that helps us with all the contracting aspects, because we do issue about 500 awards a year. And so we are a pretty heavy load on the contracting office. Okay, so this is the timeline. I already kind of showed it to you in another form. The LOI is due on January 14th. The applications are due on February 26th. We strive to provide you with an award notification within 90 days after the applications are due. We do that with the majority of the applications. After you do receive your notification, if you are selected for award, then it will be about 6 weeks or so where you are working with our contracting office and sort of dotting the I's on the financials and other contracting aspects. And so approximately 6 weeks after award notification is when you can start your budget period. This is just the July 7th, release 1 funding opportunity. Mark your calendar, see if there's anything for you in there. And okay, so what are your resources for putting together your application? Topics document, very important. Those are the technology areas for which we are seeking applications. You have to respond to a topic and subtopic pair. It's important to know that open communication is permitted with the DOE program managers. There is a topic manager listed in the documents under each subtopic area, and you may reach out to them with questions. But we do recommend that your questions be around understanding what they're looking for in an application, what type of technologies they want to see, what type of technologies they may not want to see. And keeping your emails short and concise and easy to answer. They are very busy. SBIR is, like I said, 3.5% of the federal budget. It's about 3.5% of their job. So just try to be very mindful of their time in your communication with the program managers. We talked about the topic webinar. You should make sure you go back to the recording and check it out. This is what the topics look like. See this blue table here at the top? It's really important that you pay attention to that. In your phase 1 application, don't ask for more than the maximum phase 1 award amount for your R&D effort. And then look and check to see what type of applications they are accepting. For this particular solicitation, we're accepting SBIR phase 1, STTR phase 1, and we are also accepting fast track applications, which I'll talk about in a minute. Make sure you read the topics very carefully. Make sure when you submit your letter of intent that you specify the correct topic, subtopic, because your application must also specify the same topic and subtopic. You cannot switch from LOI to application. Make sure you read all the references. You are expected to be an expert in your technology area, and you want to make sure that you've read the same sources of information that the program managers clearly deem important in the technology area, because they have listed them in the topics document. So become familiar with the references. And of course, I mentioned there's topic contact for each of the subtopics. We do, at times when we release topics, release technology transfer opportunities, we do not have any TTOs in this topics document, but it would be an opportunity. It's an opportunity identified by a national lab, mostly a national lab, could be a university with a specific technology that they're requesting applications for businesses to develop an innovation into a commercial product. Interesting process, but we don't have any TTOs in this release. We generally have 0, 1, 2 in our topics document, not many. The notice of funding opportunity, which came out last week, please read the NOFO. It's very important that you understand all the rules of the program. You understand how to apply. It will keep you from making mistakes. Some of the mistakes that people make, unfortunately, end up having the applications declined without review. There's not that many of them, but you do want to be carefully read all of the requirements and understand them as you're preparing your application. We have an application guide. It should be considered a very important resource for you. It has a planner, like what you should be getting done each day. I think there's a 12-week planner and an 8-week planner, help get you organized. It has detailed instructions on preparing an LOI, preparing your project narrative, filling out your many forms. It has many example forms filled out, not all of them, and a bunch of blank forms. So there's a lot there for you. Always interested in feedback on how we can make that better. Here are the 3 documents. There we do have tutorials as well. I think it's 36 tutorials. It breaks our application process into little bite-sized pieces, and each tutorial is probably about 5 minutes long. So easy to pick the one that you're interested in hearing about and listen to it. Okay, you must submit an LOI by January 14th in order to be eligible to submit a phase 1 application to this NOFO. Why do we do LOIs? Well, we have 90 days. We strive for 90 days from the time you submit your application to the time that you receive a notification. And so the LOIs help us plan. We understand what applications are coming in and line up reviewers. And so that way we can hit the ground running on the review process on the application due date. Now, those of you who are experienced with LOIs probably know that if the program manager reviews your LOI in the past and decides that it's not responsive, it's something that what is being proposed is something that they're really not interested in and it's not a good fit, you will receive an email notification with comments to that effect. New in this particular cycle is that some of the EERE offices are going to send notifications to all LOI submitters, whether they're responsive or whether they're not responsive. So you may, if you are applying to one of those offices, you will receive an LOI email regardless of whether or not it's responsive or non-responsive. You may submit 10 letters of intent and 10 applications for solicitation, which is not recommended. It would be a lot of work. It depends on your bandwidth and the actual size of your company. But each application must be unique. There are instructions in the guide as well as the funding opportunity about preparing your letter of intent and what should be in it. You submit it on the PAM site. This is wrong, the February 2nd. I'm sorry about that. That slide did not get updated. It's a PDF file. We do have, I'll go to the next slide. There is in our application guide, there's detailed instructions on preparing your letter of intent. Click on this link or on this QR code. And we also have a sample LOI. You want to explain why you want to really explain at the top why the R&D is responsive to the topic, be very clear about it, and then provide enough detail about the R&D so that the program managers can select the right reviewers. Do not include any proprietary information in your letter of intent. There are 4 system registrations that are required in order to submit the application. The PAMS registration, that's where you submit your letter of intent, should take 5 minutes. SBA registration, same, should only take a few minutes. SAM.gov can take up to 6 weeks. So if you have not started your SAM.gov registration, please start it today. And you do have to do an annual update of your SAM.gov registration. Even if you already have a SAM.gov, you have to go and update your information annually. Once your SAM.gov registration is complete, that is when you can go on grants.gov and start submitting your application package. So SAM.gov has to be done in order to submit your application package. Here's just some information about grants.gov, the URL, and they have a support desk, and they have online tutorials as well. If you're having problems with grants.gov, you're really best off reaching out to the grants.gov people. If you, for any reason, you have trouble getting responses from them, you can reach out to us as a second option. In the Notice of Funding Opportunity announcement, there is a checklist here of all the required forms. It's a good thing to have by your side as you're putting together all your application documents. The project narrative limit is 15 pages. I do believe that we took out the word requirements. I think that's old. But 15 pages is the limit. There's a fairly new requirement as a result of the SBIR Authorization Act of 2022 is that you do need to submit a foreign relationship disclosure form and more. All the items that are listed here and shown on this page are required. And some of them are not required. If you don't have any sub-consultants or sub-award, you're not going to have to get the letter of commitment from those people. So there are some that are optional, depending on the requirements and if they're applicable. As I mentioned, we have fast track applications. They are topic specific, geothermal heating and cooling. Topic 6006 is accepting SBIR application, fast track applications. You're proposing a phase 1 and a phase 2 award in one application. So it's a lot of work. You're putting together your phase 1 application, and then you're also preparing your phase 2 application. And so you have to sort of put together, instead of a 6 to 12 month plan, you have to put together almost a 3-year research and development plan. Our NOFO does provide guidance on the fast track application. There's a section there on the requirements, level of effort, requirements. You have to fulfill the phase 1 level of effort requirements for your first budget period, and then you have to fulfill the phase 2 level of effort requirements for the second and third budget period. More than likely, in your fast track application, you're going to have 3 budget periods. So check out the guidance there. We are going to have a Q&A webinar that is exclusively devoted to the fast track application. If you are on our mailing list, and if you submit a letter of intent, you will be invited to that webinar. So please stay alert. When you submit your LOI, you are going to indicate if you're submitting a fast track application, and that will be the list of invitees that are invited to that webinar. In the FOA, we also have the information about the required elements of the fast track application. Your project narrative is going to be longer. It's a bigger project. It's a 25-page max, and the word requirement is not part of, we have eliminated the word requirement. Commercialization plan is much more detailed. It is a 15-page plan with a number of required elements that is much more extensive than the phase 1 commercialization plan. We will be covering that information in the Q&A webinar that I mentioned. One thing that's really important is technical and business assistance. Let me go back. I guess I'm going to talk about it. Yeah, I didn't have it. I'll talk about it at the next slide. So TABA is technical and business assistance. If you're going to apply for a phase 1 award and you're going to ask for $200,000, you can ask for an additional $6,500, and that would be to pay a subcontractor to help you during the phase 1 award process to develop your phase 2 commercialization plan. That's the 15-page commercialization plan that's required for a phase 2 application. But in phase 2, you're allowed to budget up to $50,000 as a phase 2 awardee for technical and business assistance, and that would be for a third-party vendor, a subcontractor, to help you execute and plan your commercialization activities. And that is over and above the R&D maximum. There's a cybersecurity self-assessment requirement that's part of the phase 2 application, and so it is part of the fast track application as well. And if you are submitting a fast track application and you have a bill topic, they are identified. There are additional requirements that you need to look at. There are new phase 2 commercialization plan specifications. As I mentioned, they've been updated. And so if you're submitting a fast track application, you need to be concerned about that. Again, they're in the NOFO, these directions. So just read carefully through the sections. We don't require the return on investment worksheet, but we still require the pro forma templates as part of the commercialization plan. And we also have limited the letters of support to 5 for the phase 2 application. To be a 1 PDF, which includes your 15-page commercialization plan, less than 5 letters of support, and your pro forma income statement. And that's for phase 2. But again, the fast track application includes is a phase 1 and a phase 2 application in one swoop. So these requirements are part of the fast track application. You do have to submit a data management plan. You have to select one of these options that are shown here. You're either going to be interested in protecting your data and not releasing it because you don't want you don't want your competitors to see this information, and you don't want to publicly share your data. The other option is if you plan to publicly disclose data, because maybe you do want your potential customers to see this information. Maybe you do want to go to a conference and talk about your achievements. So you do have to decide which of the data management plans you will select. And note that if you leave it out of your application, which is an option, then option 1 will be assumed for your application, which is that you will not be releasing your data. There are 3 topics that are funded by the bipartisan infrastructure law and are also fast track topics. Maybe you're familiar with the bipartisan infrastructure law. It was a bill that was designed to enhance U.S. competitiveness, drive the creation of good-paying union jobs, tackle the climate crisis, and ensure strong access to economic, environmental, and benefits to disadvantaged communities. So if you're applying for one of these 3 topics and you are submitting a fast track application, there are additional requirements that you need to pay attention to, reporting requirements, and that's really only of concern when you get to the execution of the second part of your fast track award. But as I mentioned before, you're now required to submit a disclosure of foreign relationships. You can go ahead and grab that form. It's in our application guide, and there's a link to it on our application resources page. You must include it. We reserve the right to decline your application if you have not included it. Even if your small business has no foreign relationships, it'll be very easy to fill out the form, but you do have to complete the form and certify it by signing it. In the last couple of years, the markings of our proprietary data have changed. So if you've submitted an application prior to this change, please pay attention to this. You do want to mark your proprietary data that you do not want disclosed to the public, so that we know specifically what specifically that information is. And that the government, if you mark your data correctly, the government is not able to use that information for any purpose other than application evaluation and will not release it for 20 years. So on the title page of the document, there's a legend that you must include. The legend is right here. Here's some of the things that have changed. You insert the page numbers that contain no restricted information in that legend in the bracket. And then on each page of the proposal that contains information the applicant wishes to protect, you must put this legend here, this one-line legend. There's no more marking requirements, the highlighting, the asterisks, the brackets of specific text. You no longer have to do that. We do have an example of a proprietary data marking document. So it's here at this link, and it's here also at this QR code. Here's a quick list of application errors, waiting too long with your SAM registration, which could result in being unable to submit on grants.gov. I won't read through all of these, but really the most important thing is reading the funding opportunity announcement, keeping that application checklist by your side, and making sure that you're, getting all the parts submitted and putting them in the right place. So just pay attention. You can come to, we have a number of webinars as well too to help you through the process. I'll be talking about them in a second. Okay, how do you evaluate whether your application is going to be a good fit? The first and most important aspect of developing a competitive application is that you are responsive to the topic and subtopic pair. You are proposing a technology that really is addressing what is being asked for in the topic. These are the three, historically speaking, these are the three application review criteria. There's technical merit. Is your idea novel? It must be research and development, and it also must be responsive. The number two is the ability to execute the project. Do you have a good work plan? Remember that phase one is a feasibility study. You have to link your work plan to the feasibility objectives. So make sure that you're really going to be showing whether your idea works or doesn't work. And make sure your team is composed of the right expertise. If you don't have all the expertise that you require in your small business, that's what the subcontracting allowance is for. It's 1/3 for SBIR. You can subcontract out to subject matter experts or universities. And the PI qualifications are also a very important part of this review criteria. And then you also really want to have a very good understanding of the impact of your R&D if the work is successful. You really want to know what the technology landscape is in your area, in this area, why what you're doing is novel, why it's better, why would somebody want this technology? And so you really kind of want to be able to make the case for an impact if your R&D. After you submit your application, we require a minimum of 3 technical reviewers who are external. They're not federal government employees. They're university, private sector, or national lab employees. Once the reviewers have provided their review of the applications, they come back into each program office, and the applications are ranked from the most meritorious to the least meritorious. The program managers look at the most meritorious applications and make award selections from that group of applications. And you will be notified typically on your application within 90 days of the application deadline, and you will be able to see your reviewer comments through PAM. And the LOI also will contain program manager reviewer comments. That's how you'll be able to see those comments in PAMs. Okay, here's some statistics. Last year was 17% award rate for our phase 1 applications. You can see that 24% were recommended for funding, but were not awarded. Unfortunately, you may submit a meritorious application and you're not necessarily selected for award. Disappointing. But if you do have a meritorious application, I would certainly recommend that you keep trying in future solicitations. Phase 2, if you get to a Phase 2 application, which means you're a Phase 1 awardee, you have almost 40% chance of receiving a Phase 2 award. Remember, it's 1.1 or 1.6 million. Those are pretty good odds for your Phase 2 award, which is designed for you to take your technology and demonstrate it, advance it, and get it closer to market readiness. Remember, I talked about the second Phase 2 awards, which is 2A and 2B. And here are the numbers for last year. 46% rate for the second Phase 2 award. 39% for this. There's two second Phase 2 awards, A and B. You have about a 40% chance of being awarded in those cases. And Phase 2C, remember, is the one that requires matching. And we get a very small number of those applications. 3 out of 5 were funded last year. If you are an awardee, you're expected to attend a 2-day PI meeting held in the DC area. You do want to put that into your budget. The PI is expected to attend, but you can send another person for your from your company, and particularly you may want to send a business official, because there's a lot of good panels and discussions on commercialization guidance at the PI meeting. So don't forget to include the cost of the trip in your Phase 1 budget, registration and travel specifically. All right, I talked about TABA already. So if you're preparing your Phase 1 application, you can do nothing. You can leave that $6,500 completely off your application. And if you become an awardee, you become eligible to $6,500 of services from our vendor. And our vendor currently is LARDA, and they will work with you. And during the Phase 1 award, the TABA services are really focused on preparing your Phase 2 commercialization plan. Remember that 15-page plan that you need to put together for your Phase 2 application. Now, if you prefer to put the $6,500 in your budget, and because you have a vendor that you want to use, you may do that as well too. So if you were applying for $200,000 worth of R&D, your total requested amount, if you are using your own TABA vendor, could be $2,605. In Phase 2, you must use a subaward, okay? So if you're preparing a fast track application, you must put that $50,000 in your Phase 2 budget period. You don't want to miss out on the opportunity to have those funds to prepare for commercialization, market research, product pricing, preparing a pitch deck, customer discovery. There's a lot that you can use that money for. You may have heard of I-Corps. As an awardee, you become eligible to our phase shift program, which is different, a little bit tweaked version of I-Corps, and it is an intensive customer discovery process. You learn a lot by doing 30 customer interviews about your market, who would buy your technology, why they would buy it, what the price point would be, what features that they want, and more. And then be aware that if you have computing requirements, high performance computing requirements as an awardee, you are eligible to apply for using our high performance scientific computing facility. Commercialization is one of the important goals of the SBIR STTR programs. Congress wants to see return of investment of taxpayer dollars in terms of revenues, job creation, and scientific or societal benefit. So it's just be aware that at the end of the day, if you're not successful in commercializing your technology, your business is not going to be successful. So your business success depends on commercialization. There's the R&D, but there's also, very importantly, developing a sound commercialization strategy. We offer a fair number of commercialization resources. And I mentioned them, the phase shift program, the PI meeting, the TABA services, and then there are more as you transition your technology further along in the development path. I'm just going to talk about them briefly here. We have a number of quarterly commercialization workshops. Everybody's welcome. These are the ones that have already occurred, and their recordings are on our website, and they are on the SBIR partnering platform. So if you're interested in listening on some of these topics, they're industry experts on these topics speaking and providing guidance to small businesses who are wanting to commercialize their technology. We have a partnering platform. You don't even have to be an applicant, or you don't have to be an awardee. As an innovator, you can register and gain access to the site, and you can find the partners that you need in order to help you succeed. Maybe you'll find people who are subject matter experts. Maybe you need to find TABA providers. There are investors, and there are potential customers and OEMs on this site. So please take a look at the site, register, and see who you can meet online. It's kind of like a dating site for innovators. And then here's another page on the partnering platform. Carol Rabke is our tech to market advisor who developed it. She would always be happy to speak to anyone about their partnering needs or questions about this, her various partnering programs, including the partnering platform. Okay, so typically we have someone for the DOE Office of Inspector General speak on fraud, waste, and abuse, and they were not able to come today, so unfortunately you have me to talk about this. But the Office of Inspector General is tasked with combating fraud, including fraud within the SBIR STTR program. So we do like to apprise our applicants on what constitutes fraud. One is some of these activities occur during the application process. Some of them occur during the award process. It basically revolves around not telling the truth. Have you prepared a plagiarized proposal? Providing false information about the company, the principal investigator, or the work to be performed. The federal government doesn't allow you to double dip. You cannot seek funding for work that has already been completed. The Office of Inspector General does work with other agencies, EPA, NSF, etc. And we do require you to be transparent about past awards and current applications, and to be transparent about the other type of funding that you have. During the award, you have to use the award funds for allowable expenses, and that does not involve personal use. You also can't use it for other than what you have proposed to use it for. Now, we understand that R&D takes turns, things go in different directions. You can always speak to your contracting officer and get permission to shift some of your budget work. So we are flexible in terms of how that works, but you do have to stay in contact with your contracting officer if you desire or it makes sense to use the funding for other types of R&D than what was proposed in your application. You may not submit plagiarized reports. You may not submit false reports about the work that had been completed, and claim results in the current award for an award that was previously funded by a different source. You may submit duplicate or overlapping proposals to other agencies, but it does require full disclosure. If you receive duplicate or overlapping proposal awards, you must work with the agencies to figure out the final configuration of the two awards. You may have to turn down one of those awards, or you may have to reduce the size of one of those awards. You must be eligible for the SBIR requirements for a small business, such as saying that you are majority American owned, or have 500 employees or fewer, and that turned out not to be true. The PI requirements must be fulfilled. You must fulfill the level of effort requirements as stated. The grantee company for SBIR Phase 1 must perform a minimum of 2/3 of the research. You can't just farm it out to another contractor. You cannot farm it out to another, to a university. University employees on an SBIR award should disclose their involvement to the university, as well as the university facility. So you've got to let the university know officially what's going on, and you must perform the R&D in the United States. If you commit fraud, knowingly are dishonest and commit fraud or other wrongdoing, there will be an investigation. The Office of Inspector General refers violations of civil or criminal to the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice will investigate. Since it's both civil and criminal potentially violations, you may be sentenced to prison and required to pay full restitution. DOE may terminate your award and debar you from receiving grants or contracts from other federal agencies. And you can pay up to treble damages as well. And then here's one example of a case that was finalized in December 2021. There were co-owners of the company Science Tomorrow, Agrawal and Nayak. They submitted a proposal. The letter of support from a key subcontractor was fabricated. The subcontractor was purportedly stating that they were going to contribute more money than was the case. And they inflated the amount of money they were receiving from the contractor in order to make their application look more favorable. They did receive the Phase 2 award in the amount of $999,000 to do research and development of a scanning electron microscope detector. The owners were very aware of the fake letter, and so the award was granted, and then the state of Kentucky does some matching with Phase 2 awards, and they got $500,000 from Kentucky, because Kentucky does in the case of a Phase 2 award, provide such matching funds. And there was, in the course of the investigation, the Office of Inspector General did gain access to the company's bank records, and they showed that they had not paid the contractors as they indicated that they were. They transferred money to personal accounts. They used the SBIR funds to pay for an MBA degree in Chicago, which was not an allowed expense. So there were a number of false certifications to the Department of Energy in terms of what the money had been used for, but the bank records showed that the money had not been used for the things that they had stated they did with the money. At the end of a contract, at the end of a grant period, if you still have money left in your account, the DOE will recover that funding, but in this case, she had transferred the $300,000 left over from the grant at the end of the award and spent for personal uses. So as part of this case and the trial, Agrawal was sentenced to 42 months in prison. She's still serving that sentence. The other lesser involved owner was sentenced to 6 months in prison and 6 months of home stay. In addition to that, they are ordered to pay back over $1 million to DOE and $500,000 to the state of Kentucky. So as an example, this is the type of case that the Office of Inspector General will pursue and prosecute. And if you have, you may, if you're knowledgeable about any fraudulent acts involving the DOE, subcontractors, contractors, or any crime affecting programs, Operation Government Funds, you may reach out to the Office of Inspector General at any time, and we appreciate hearing about such fraudulent acts. Okay, so now we're done. We're pretty much done with the presentation. But one thing I want to emphasize is that we have the granting program, the phase 1, the phase 2 awards, but we do offer assistance to help you get going. We do have a number of applicant resources, so please make use of these resources. We have, as an awardee, you receive access to all these programs that will help you really are mostly around commercialization success to help you understand your market and prepare yourself for your commercialization of your technology. And I want everybody to know that there's a lot of programs at DOE that are relevant to entrepreneurs. This slide will be posted on our website. You can go check out some of these programs. They are stage of technology relevant. Some of them are for early stage technologies like the LEAP program, whereas the Office of Clean Energy Demonstration has a program. They're starting their own SBIR program that is more around demonstrating in later stage technology. So get to know all the programs at DOE that might be something that you are a fit with. And thank you. You should get on our mailing list. I do want to mention that there are going to be 7 Q&A webinars. You can jump on a call and ask us questions about the application process. Get on our mailing list to get invited to the first set of webinars. And then if you are an LOI submitter, you will be subsequently invited to the second set of webinars. Tomorrow, join us for another Q&A that's separate from the other 7 webinars. Tomorrow, we are hosting a Q&A webinar. You can jump on the call and ask us questions. But get started now by getting organized, making a plan. If you're eligible for phase 0, I encourage you to apply. And if you haven't started your SAM.gov registration, make sure you start working on that today. That is all I have. Pass it back to you, Zena.
Thank you, Eileen, and thank you everyone for attending. As we indicated earlier, the recording of this webinar, along with a copy of the presentation, will be posted on our website under Funding Opportunities webpage for you to access anytime you need to. Also, the registration link for tomorrow's Q&A session is available on our website under the Funding Opportunities webpage. You can go ahead and register for that and join us tomorrow. Also, the recording of that session will be posted on our website, so you can listen to it anytime you need to. Until then, thank you and have a good evening.